The logistics of prescribed fires. Fire! Fire! 911! There's a fire! Oh, what? This one's cool. You said it? I'm not allowed to call anymore? Feels a little harsh, don't you think? She hung up. Sorry for the freak out. Turns out this is a prescribed fire, the kind authorities intentionally set here in Yosemite National Park, along with in other national parks, public lands, and tribal territories. There's a good chance you're familiar with this practice. It boils down to little burn now, so no big burn later. But how do people actually plan and execute these fires? How do you ensure little burn now doesn't become big burn also now? And how many people need to sign off before you can take a drip torch to a national park? Because in my experience, it can't just be your mom. Everything in the world of fire management comes down to one thing: teamwork. Wait, that's not right. Paper shuffling sounds. Nothing against teamwork, but... here we go. Everything in the world of fire management comes down to one thing: fuel. In a car, that's gas. In a forest, it's downed or diseased trees and branches, small diameter trees, and general dry leaves and brush. Anything that would catch fire without much convincing. So in the Studhorse burn unit in Yosemite, for example, that means bare clover, incense cedar shrubs, and pine needles. And while getting fuel into your car is a matter of purposefully filling it up with the stuff, a forest floor naturally fills itself up with fuel over time. And when fire comes through, it burns off. Once upon a time, landscapes would burn through their fuel with some regular cadence, and the species that lived there adapted to it. Giant sequoia seeds, for example, use fire conditions to germinate. Eventually, people arrived and learned how to time and place the fires to both maintain the forest and optimize conditions for their own agricultural and hunting use. Then European people arrived and were like, "Fire scary! No fire! Put out all the fires!" Then outlawed the on-purpose fires in 1850. By 1935, the U.S. Forest Service had a 10 a.m. policy, which is to say, they aimed to extinguish any fire that got reported to them by 10 a.m. the next day. The result of these policies? Fuel buildup. Lots and lots of fuel buildup. And here's the thing. Fire is like Beyoncé. You can't assume that if you haven't seen it in a while, it's not coming back. In fact, if you haven't seen it in a while, you should just assume something very dramatic is going to happen soon. If you extinguish every fire you can, one day, one will still come that you can't. And if you've left the forest chock-a-block with fuel, well, it'll get dramatic. Specifically, you'll get a fire that kills more of the trees, damages the soil, and, thanks to shrubs that grew too tall and just the general high piling of flammable stuff, the fire will climb to the overstory and start burning up the big boys, rather than just spring cleaning the floor. Why prescribed fires are necessary. Prescribed fire is about stopping fuel from building up that much, so you have more frequent, less intense fires than rarer, more damaging ones. But wait, you might be wondering, can't we just get rid of the fuel without burning it? Well, we do. That's called mechanical thinning, and it refers to sending people in to clear out fuels, either to burn elsewhere or be put to some other use, like being wood chips or conceptual art. It also sometimes refers to sending goats in to eat it. Mechanical thinning can be great, but it's not a full solution. For starters, on large swaths of land, paying crews to hand thin the forest is prohibitively expensive. Say what you will about fire's methods, but it doesn't charge an hourly wage. Also, the goal of prescribed burns is to mimic the landscape's natural fire regime. All those fire-adapted bugs and plants would still be screwed over if we just removed fuels and never lit up the rest. And one last thing, in Yosemite, the thinning prescription includes cutting and piling living or dead conifers under 15.3 centimeters in diameter at breast height, a process that they found creates more fuels as little twigs and other small bits of wood come down, so the burn is still necessary. Designing the fire. Once you've decided an area needs a fresh coat of fire, you have to design that fire. To see how that works, let's head back to the Studhorse unit. It's just east of the Wawona Hotel, as well as several rental cabins people stay in when they visit Yosemite. This makes the area part of what's known as the WWI, the Wildland Urban Interface, and also one of history's best acronyms in my opinion. The WWI is where human settlement, buildings, and infrastructure meet the wilderness, a place where fire can jump from the forest to, people. Prescribed fires in places like the Studhorse unit are designed to keep their fuel load down, thus making it easier for firefighters to defend places like Wawona in case of a wildfire. To that end, in 2023, fire specialists at Yosemite ignited a prescribed fire covering 115 acres of Unit 5 on April 19th and 20th, then again at 6 p.m. on May 11th and throughout the day on the 12th. They then burnt 56 acres across Units 1 and 2 in the fall, starting on October 4th and doing another round of ignitions the next afternoon. But before there were ignitions, there was paperwork. Lots and lots of paperwork. Arguably, enough to fuel a prescribed burn. Every prescribed burn in the United States needs a written, reviewed, and authorized prescribed burn plan, which is 25 pages before you fill it out. If you want to know more about that, you can read this, which is 51 pages, but also links to stuff like this, which is just about smoke and is 236. That's a lot of kindling. The burn plan has 21 elements, and we will not be getting into all of them. But here are a few. Element 8, scheduling and fire, as in drop shipping, comedy, and breakups, timing is everything. First, you have to pick a season. In Yosemite, that'll be spring or fall, when the air is cooler and the fuel isn't quite as dry. In the Studhorse units, you're targeting this fuel moisture range and this relative humidity and temperature outside. So you've picked your season. How about your day? That's going to be based on a few things. One is the weather. You don't want winds over 10 miles per hour, for risk they could carry fire past the limits of the prescribed burn. You also don't want to do it when firefighting resources are focused elsewhere. So if there's a wildfire raging, even in a different part of the state, you'll probably hold off. Once you pick a date, you need a time. In Yosemite, late afternoons and evenings bring higher humidity and winds heading downslope. It's easier for fire crews to work down a hill than up it. Plus, the downslope winds will blow fire deeper into this burn unit rather than across its borders. So 6 p.m. it is, and congrats, once you've considered all that, you've filled out Part A1 of Element 8 of your burn plan. Element 12, communication. It takes a village to burn a forest, so your plan needs to include radio frequencies that you'll use to communicate with anyone securing the perimeter, monitoring the weather, raining hellfire from a helicopter, or otherwise involved. Element 16, holding plan. How are you going to ensure the fire doesn't blow past the boundaries you set? Who's manning the edges to extinguish fire that spreads too far? What equipment do they have? Where is it coming from? What features make up the borders? Roads? Bodies of water? Something with fuel in it? If that, are you going to take the fuel out? Who's doing that? How? Element 17, contingency plan. If something as stupid as a gender reveal can light Callie on fire, so can your fire. What's the plan if things get out of hand? What resources can you call on? How long is it going to take them to get here? Bringing us to Element 18, who has the authority to declare that this has become a wildfire? Once you've answered all of these questions and filled out the other 16 elements and attached a bunch of maps and other supplemental stuff, you need to have a technical reviewer come look over all of it, and then you do the signature page. That's where you name the fire. I would name mine Sam. Put down who wrote the plan, who reviewed it, its complexity level on a scale of 1 to 3, and the corresponding burn boss qualifications someone will need to manage it. Then you can get a signature from the agency administrator, which in the case of a national park would be the park superintendent. And then you're ready to burn. Final preparations and execution. Almost. You assemble all your equipment and all these people. Only one of those jobs is made up, by the way. And there's still just one more step. It's called the go, no, go checklist. This basically confirms that conditions are the same as